Please join me in welcoming Mary.
Delighted to be here. I am here simply to get this panel started, but let me introduce the panel to you first, and then we will start with some questions. So right here next to me, Dr. Michael Lomax has served as the president and CEO of the United Negro College Fund since 2004. UNCF is the nation's largest private provider of scholarships and educational support to African American students and a leading advocate of college readiness. Under his leadership, UNCF has raised more than $3 billion and helped more than 110,000 students earn college degrees and launch careers. Additionally, UNCF's work enables 60,000 students to go to college with UNCF scholarships and attend its 37-member HBCUs. Also under his leadership, UNCF launched the UNCF Institute for Capacity Building, which is particularly relevant for today's conversations, helping member HBCUs grow stronger, more effective, and self-sustaining. So thank you. Thanks for joining us. Next to Dr. Lomax is Dr. Anthony Davis. He's the 13th president of Livingstone College. He graduated magna cum laude from Livingstone in 2001. And is the first alumnus in 25 years to serve as president. Prior to becoming president, Dr. Davis served as the senior vice president and chief operating officer for Livingstone. His passion for education, community, and social justice has positioned him to provide visionary strategic leadership in support of a number of colleges, universities, and nonprofit organizations. His work has resulted in the procurement of more than $400 million in gifts and grants, and a special emphasis on major gifts and planned giving, successfully securing donor contributions at the $10,000 through $5 million level. Now, after those two introductions, y'all are afraid we're going to pass a hat here in a minute, and you've got two of the best fundraisers that we have introduced up here. And then finally, at the end of the panel, we have North Carolina State Representative Carla Cunningham. She represents the 106th District in the North Carolina House of Representatives. Before being elected to the North Carolina General Assembly in 2012, Carla worked as a hospice nurse and was fulfilling her appointment to the North Carolina Commission for Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services. An active civic and community leader, she is a recognized national advocate for health care, women, children, mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us. It's a delight to have you here with us. And as I mentioned to Dr. Lomax before we started, we have people all over the country. Wow. So we have some of our North and South Carolina folks here, but you have people who are working with and representing colleges and universities all over the country. So speaking of which of you all actually attended an HBCU? And talk about a day in the life. We know you did, Dr. Davis.
Yes, I did.
Go on, you start.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be here today. I attended an HBCU after my military career. Came from humble beginnings. You're looking at someone who was 90 days from aging out of foster care. And I aged out, but I went into the United States military, and I went back to college after my military career. But when I arrived on the campus of Livingstone College, it was everything that everyone said about an HBCU. A small family environment where they were going to help you unlock your potential, and that's exactly what they did, and here I am as their 13th president.
And did you know then that you wanted to be back on campus one day?
I did. It was a deferred dream, as Langston Hughes talked about. What happens when a dream is deferred? It was deferred for me, but I went back, and in 2001, I said, hey, you know what? I think I want to be a college president. And 22 years later, I am the college president at Livingstone College. So,
oh, that's so cool.
Yes.
Cunningham, did you go to an HBCU?
Yes, I did. I am a Winston-Salem State University nursing student grad, earning my bachelor of science degree from there in 2009, but I actually went to two other institutions before then. Originally, I went to Central Piedmont Community College and graduated with a licensed practical nurse degree. Returned Gaston College in 1993, graduated with my applied science degree in nursing, and then later went on back to Winston-Salem, earning my bachelor's degree. And that was 30 years invested in education. I'm a first generation out of my family. And, education has lifted me up and been able to lift my children up with me as I rose. So as I thrived, they thrived also. But, you know, Winston-Salem State University, I actually was a distance learner. So I actually didn't go to campus. I actually did VA hospital up in Salisbury, was where I took my clinicians and practicums.
That's terrific. And I know I saw you, Dr. Lomax, connecting with other alums in the audience. So tell us about your experience.
Yes, well, I am a HBCU grad, and I am have a lot of HBCU grads in my family. So we've been doing this for a long time. But I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't expect to go there. I was growing up in Los Angeles. My mother was a journalist. And she had started writing about the civil rights movement as early as 1957, when she went to Montgomery to cover the bus boycott. And she decided that was the story of her life, and she wanted to spend more time in the South writing about it directly. So in 1961, she took me and my 5 brothers and sisters to Macon County, Alabama, home of Tuskegee Institute. Now, I went from the Los Angeles Public Schools to Tuskegee Institute. And to Tuskegee Institute High School, where the janitor rode to school on a mule that grazed out in front of the building, and where you had you know, a lot of the disparities that we think about in Southern education. But it was a transformative experience for me. I had never been in rural South. I'd never met such wonderful people, and classmates who could hunt. And would hunt squirrel and possum and, you know, and eat it. So I said, now these are some really interesting people. But in 1964, we'd gone back to LA, and I was going to be a senior in high school, but my mother said she wanted to go back south again. And so I said, well, I can't go. I've got to go to college next year. And she said, well, if you'll come south with me, I'll send you to prep school, or I'll send you to one of the colleges that has a program for people who haven't finished high school. And I almost went to Palmer Institute.
Yes.
In
Sedalia,
North Carolina.
Right.
Good thing I didn't go to Palmer. Too small. Got admitted to Fisk University and to Morehouse. And Fisk had a very long list of clothes you had to bring. So I said, I'm not going to Fisk, I'm going to Morehouse. And it was the greatest decision I ever made in my life. I was the only student at Morehouse in that freshman class in 1964 from Los Angeles. But I met 4 guys from Durham, North Carolina, who adopted me. And we are still, you know, 55 years after graduation, we're still best friends.
Oh, that's great.
That's right.
And so I lift up not just the academic, I had a great academic education.
That's right.
But I lift up that this is a kind of, before there was networking, there were HBCUs, and that's how we networked.
That's right.
And those 4 guys and the 100 guys who graduated with me at Morehouse, we're a fraternity and a brotherhood, and that's why I'd say it's special about HBCUs. It's the embrace that you get from that community.
That's right.
That's terrific. So as the work with UNCF, you've been supporting HBCUs since 1944. So what's different now? How's it become more challenging? Yeah. We're going to eventually engage you all on how you can help, but sort of give us a lay of the land and what's happening.
You know, you think about 1944, that's the end of World War II. Black soldiers are going to come back, and men and women, by the way. Just remember, there were some women who were over there in the women's, the WACs, and they were from North Carolina. There was a North Carolina contingent of them. They did all the postal service in France, I think, during World War II. But they were going to come back, and after every great war in this country, the country has opened up to opportunity, and the founders of UNCF knew that those soldiers who had fought for democracy were going to come back, and they were going to want more opportunities. And after all that they had done to defend democracy, they were hopeful that they would get more opportunities. And so they wanted to create a United Negro College fundraising organization to raise money to help students and the colleges. And they got John D. Rockefeller to lead that first campaign. They raised $750,000, equal to $10 million today. And in the 79 years since then, we've raised over $5 billion and helped over 500,000 students graduate from college. People weren't raising money for HBCUs, and you know, we in a good year, and these presidents said, "Get on me, Lomax, how much have you raised for me this year?" You know, they'll say, "What have you done?" And we were, in the 19 years I've been at UNCF, we would raise something like on the order of $80, $90 million. And when COVID hit, we didn't think we were going to do very well. Mm-hmm. And I had to take a 40% pay cut. Everybody took a pay cut. We got hunkered down and see if we could go virtual. And we didn't raise, we thought we'd raise $40 million. We didn't raise $40 million in that first year. We raised $249 million. Wow. That's right. And then $215 million after that. And then when we close our books on March 31st of this year, it'll be over $350 million. So one of the things I'm going to tell you that's really changed, Mary, is that we're raising more money than we've ever raised. And I think we're doing that because today, I think America recognizes that HBCUs have done more with less, and it's about time they started doing more with more.
That's right. That's right.
So that's what we do.
That's right.
That's great. And so how has that changed Livingstone?
UNCF has been one of our partners. We're a beneficiary of the great work that Dr. Lomax and his team does on a daily basis out there telling the HBCU story. It impacts us because the students that we serve, I always say that all HBCUs are not created equal. We serve a niche in the population. 97% of the students on my campus are Pell eligible. 73% are first-generation college attendees. In the absence of a Livingstone College, we would leave countless young people and their families trapped at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder with no means of escape. I believe it was U.S. News and World Report gave us one of the best rankings that they could for an HBCU in North Carolina. They said that Livingstone College is ranked number 20 for social mobility, which means that we take students where they are, but when we finish with all of our wraparound services and all the things that we do, we enable them to compete and contribute in a global context with confidence and competence. That's what we do on the campus of Livingstone College, and we're thankful for our strategic partners like UNCF, the AME Zion Church. Think about this. 144 years ago, we were birthed with an audacious idea. An audacious idea from members of the AME Zion Church. And for 144 years, we just received our first state appropriation 2 years ago coming out of COVID. But all that you see at Livingstone College has been the benevolence of, again, UNCF, members of the AME Zion Church, and our alumni, in the words of Dr. Maya Angelou, and still we rise. Still we rise.
That's amazing. So what about legislation? What's on the horizon? What's helping the HBCU community or could help?
I need to go back a minute because I'm going to be very authentic here today. I appreciate what Mr. Lomax said, but some history behind why individuals that were African Americans that returned even after the Vietnam War and weren't eligible to receive other benefits as their white counterparts. It also put us back significantly as far as economics and generational wealth. And that's something that we're beginning to talk about more is generational wealth. How do we create it? The legislature has done appropriations and they continue to do appropriations. But those appropriations are done by leadership. Whoever holds the gavel and holds the power is the one that makes decisions on appropriations. Those appropriations have never been equitable to HBCUs. They have never. Not even when Democrats were in charge. I'm gonna be honest, never. Maybe they got more, but it has never been equitable. So as we move forward, I have worked on a piece of legislation, and it is the sports betting bill, which is about to come up. I negotiated with the lobbyists and the individuals that own and operate those companies to look at some of the HBCUs and not ask for $1 million, but ask for 10% of what those companies bring into the state of North Carolina, which could be upward of $12 to $20 billion annually. So they agreed to that. We couldn't get the private institutions in right now, but we're still talking about it. It's not done, but negotiating and understanding that where the power lies. Some people think the power's in the city. Some people think that it's at the federal level. State supersedes in most cases. State supersedes. Only case that I know that they don't is on the minimum wage. We can't go below $7.25, but we can go above. That's a federal statute. But in most cases, what we have in the state of North Carolina, and as you look around the country in the southern states, there is a plan of inequitable distribution to continue. But it is your voice. It is the people that have to rise up, make those calls, learn how to advocate for themselves, and make the power be heard in your voice. It's not my voice. It's the people's voice. It's the public voice that you have to learn how to advocate and go to the people in power. We did establish the HBCU caucus that was recently done, and that is both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats. Will that change things? Maybe. But you still have to follow what the power is. But you can beat that power too. Your voices matter. But the value of what you're doing and where you're placing it matters more.
That's right.
It matters more. I can go up there and scream and holler all I want to. If I ain't got people with me, I'm not going to go sit down because I don't have no power.
That's right.
People know power. Money comes with power. Voices also are heard by powerful people, but you got to learn how to tell the story and be ready when it's time.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any disagreement that we've got to have strong public support for our HBCUs, and I'm delighted to see a Representative Cunningham, and she's a fierce advocate for HBCUs.
That's right.
And we need more of those in our state legislatures. UNCF does lobby at the federal level. We don't really do any at the state level. And what we did during COVID was really to fight for federal funding for HBCUs and minority-serving institutions. And for the first time, we're able to get billions, I'm talking with a B, of dollars for our historically black colleges and for minority-serving institutions out of the funds that were made available to higher education to help those institutions during that difficult time. And a couple of things I'm very proud of were, well, one of which was that a number of our institutions had debt. They borrowed to do what so many of our institutions want to do, and that is to refurbish their buildings on their campus.
That's right.
And our historically black colleges had about $1.2 billion in debt. And UNCF, working hard, was able to get all $1.2 billion of that forgiven, wiped out, clean, pure, no longer that.
I want to say something about that. Livingstone College was a beneficiary of that. Again, the work that UNCF executed at the federal level allowed us to erase a lot of the red ink, and now we're able to make this quantum leap into the future, and we're excited about where we are and where we're going. I want to go back to something that Representative Cunningham said, that we have your voice, but your voice needs to articulate our value, because HBCUs punch well above their fighting weight. Underfunded, under-resourced, but when you look at our outcomes, it's unmatched. I think we represent a total of what, 30% of all colleges and universities? I mixed that. I get it wrong. 15?
We are 3%.
3%, that's right.
All American colleges and universities.
And yet we produce 24%.
We enroll 10% of all black students pursuing a higher education.
Give them the STEM number.
And we produce 24% of all the STEM graduates in the nation are graduates of HBCUs. And one of the things that's another thing that UNCF does is we do a lot of research, and we try to put those numbers together so we'll all remember them and provide Dr. Davis, as he goes out, with the point. And I forgot to bring my, because we have that one booklet on about punching above their weight. I think you had it. I saw some of your numbers.
I have it. I have it, but it's underneath my chair.
Well,
So the economic impact
Right.
is 1.7 billion.
in the state of North Carolina.
In the state of North Carolina, and the employment is close to 15,000 of employees on the campuses, on the HBCU campuses. So the contribution is above a match on a dollar. Each dollar matches above. And also 70%, I think it's 70% of students that attend the HBCUs are
Pell eligible.
Pell Grant recipients. So what we give back, and I think there's, and I might be going faster than what you want me to, but I see an opportunity ahead. Because
That's right.
I am in healthcare, and we know that with the Medicaid expansion that just happened in the state of North Carolina, we will pick up an additional 300,000 people. But we have to have providers. We can't graduate enough nurses fast enough, and our HBCUs do a hell of a job graduating healthcare people. And so I think it's going to be more of an opportunity there to expand that in HBCUs. And another issue that we're going to see is what you call cultural competence and cultural humanity, where you're having to deal with people from their culture, not necessarily, you can't even look at people anymore and say, well, yeah, I'm black, but I might not be black. You can't look at the color of the skin and determine the ethnicity of the country. You're going to have to listen and dialogue with them. And on the healthcare rising, we're going to be on the front line of trying to meet people where they are, eliminate some of the healthcare disparities, and ignite cultural competency, because without that, people at home and their families help determine their health outcomes. And that culture plays a large role in that. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity coming forward for us to start increasing the enrollment inside of HBCUs in the healthcare arena.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, so we are getting ready. We are commissioning another economic impact study. So those numbers that you had about North Carolina in another 6 months or so, those will be the old numbers, because the last economic impact study that we did was almost 10 years ago. $14 billion, over 100,000 employees. If we were a Fortune 50 company, we'd be Oracle across all HBCUs.
That's right.
So they're having a big impact on communities, but as much as that economic impact, I think the point that both of you have made about the social mobility, because HBCUs are the starting point for most Black Americans in getting a higher education, a post-secondary, a post-high school degree. They start that at an HBCU. And once one family member gets that family member always does what you do at an HBCU is you reach back and pull somebody up. And I see a Prairie View out there, and I bet you they were doing that in Hempstead and Prairie View, and every one of these institutions.
Right.
And want to remember that we're streaming all across America, and that HBCUs, while they're concentrated in the old southern states and in Midwest as far up as Ohio and in Pennsylvania, most HBCUs are in the South, which is increasingly where the Black population is, because we're having a reverse migration. 50% of all children in public school today, Black children in public school, are in the South. So this is a really important issue. And so I'm delighted that they're looking at those numbers. I do want to say one more thing about the public funding. Public dollars are so important, and we fight every year to get additional federal funding for HBCUs. But UNCF receives no public dollars. We have over 200,000 donors, all of them private individuals, foundations, and corporations. And so I want to do a big shout out to Wells Fargo Nation, because it's Wells Fargo is one of our chief corporate supporters, and Wells Fargo employees all across the country donate to UNCF, and we do a lot of fundraising all across the country, and we always count on Wells Fargo to be one of our supporters. And I think that's because Wells Fargo sees the economic benefit.
That's right.
And that UNCF is having. But we're raising private dollars, so we want your money.
That's right. That's right.
I told you.
You knew it was coming, right?
Yeah,
you knew it was coming.
You got
you knew it was coming.
And what we want to do is we want to. So we're engaging right now in a $1 billion capital campaign. Now, don't tell anybody I said it because we haven't announced it. But we're in the quiet phase right now. But we have raised over $430 million. So I think we're going to have to extend this to be probably about a $1.5 billion campaign. But as much as the scholarships are important, the big and most exciting feature, I think, of our capital campaign is that we will have a $370 million endowment for the private HBCUs that are members of UNCF. So that you will have.
That's right.
Livingstone will have $10 million share in that $370 million endowment. Now, I got to raise that money now.
No,
but,
we.
No, I got to raise $5 million of the 10 that he's going to get.
Right.
He and I together, and you can tell he's a sharp fundraiser.
Right.
We're going to raise that other 5. But think about that. For an institution that has an endowment of what?
$6 million.
$6 million. We add another $10 million on top of that. We have just about almost tripled that endowment.
Right.
And what that will be, and you know what compound interest is like. We have that $370 million endowment. People start leaving money to it, and it keeps. We invest it really nicely, and before you know it, it's going to be a $500 million endowment. It's going to be $750 million endowment, and so that great institutions like Livingstone will be able to produce through their endowments the support that they need for their students.
That's right.
And that's what I hope is going to be a legacy of this campaign.
Can I add to that? Thank you, Dr. Lomax. You think about a $6 million endowment. We have a few HBCUs that have what I call the 9-figure endowments. It cripples us to have an endowment that small, but we behave as if we have an $82 million endowment in place. Every year, through our annual operating budget, understanding that maintenance on buildings will be deferred, we provide more than $4.2 million out of our annual operating budget to help students and their families because we lack the endowment. And so having a partner like UNCF come in and say, let's work together to build our endowment is going to will enable us to sit down with families who are at the lower level of this socioeconomic strata, help them not only come to an institution like Livingstone, but they leave being wealth generators. And so that's some of the things that we'll be able to do by expanding our endowment.
So talk about some of the other success measures when you are thinking about the success of the programs of your students, whether it's graduation rates or investments back into the community. And then I'm going to ask you all to help everybody here that you'll unleash to be voices for you where they can find this kind of information.
I'll start with graduation rates and persistence rates. If you take students who come to you with deficiencies academically, your output data will just it won't be great. I'll take Livingstone College, for example. No matter who's been president, over the last 20 to 30 years, we lose 50% of our freshman class every year. That's because we take in the students that a lot of institutions lock out and leave behind. We say, come on. And we realize, and I'm not calling anybody dirt, but mining for gold can be a dirty business, right? So as we are transforming people, giving them the wraparound services to make sure that not only they catch up, but they catch up, keep up, and soar, our output data is not going to be reflective of that. You're not going to graduate in 4 years. Here's a data point that never gets revealed, because I always say the numbers have a narrative. They never talk about the number of our students who couldn't get into their first choice, second choice, or third choice, or a PWI initially. But they come to our school, they get healthy, and then they leave. Still impacts my graduation rates and my persistence rates. They never talk about the students who come and have to drop out because guess what? They're the wage earner in their families and they have to stop out. Those are the numbers that we don't talk about. So I always say, don't look at the end point, but you have to look at the entire continuum before you make an assumption.
That's great.
And I think I need to go ahead and give a shout out to my Winston-Salem State University because they do graduate more nurses than most other institutions do. And by them doing that, that lifts them up to another level of income. And we've been able to track that and see that through the economics of the nursing and whoever is coming out of their health program, they're raising themselves up to another level of income, more so than some of the other institutions.
Well, you know, everything's better in North Carolina.
That's right. That's good, but
that's good. I do want to just, I want to keep in mind that we have in the audience out there folks from across the country.
That's right.
What you're hearing about North Carolina and the students who attend Livingstone or who were at Winston-Salem State, I mean, you know, I think they are representative of our HBCU student community. And what we have learned at UNCF is that scholarships make a difference.
Big time.
But you got two kinds of scholarships. You have a traditional scholarship, which is a financial transaction. You have a bill, that scholarship helps you pay it. When you do that, that's what we call a transactional scholarship. And if a student gets a $5,000 transactional scholarship from UNCF, their graduation rate goes up around 7 or 8 percentage points. That's a pretty good, for you know, reasonably small scholarship. So they'll go from the mid-30s, which is the average for an HBCU student, to the low 40s. But if you give them a transformational scholarship, the story is even better. What is a transformational scholarship? Well, you've heard Dr. Davis really refer to it. It's those wraparound services.
That's right.
What are the wraparound services? Well, the wraparound services could be they need some academic supports. Wraparound services could be, and because of this pandemic is more often than not the case, they could need some psychological and social support.
That's right.
Wraparound services could be that they've got somebody sick at home and they've got to go back for a couple of weekends out of the year, and that's giving them the transportation support to go there. Wraparound services could be that they don't have access to Wi-Fi, and so that could be. So it's really looking at the student not just from the front, but 360
holistically
all around,
That's
and
right.
finding out what does that student need. Now, when you provide a transformational scholarship opportunity, then that student goes from a 35% graduation rate to a 70% graduation rate.
That's right.
So I think one of the things that we know, because our students are more like the students at Livingstone than they are like the students at a predominantly white institution. They have twice the number of students who are Pell eligible. That means they're at the low income level. Twice the number of students who will be the first in their families to navigate successfully a higher education environment. More likely to be non-traditional. That is, may have a family already, may have a child, and so they're going to need some other kinds of supports. And when you put all that together, that's not the typical, Leave It to Beaver kid who gets driven up and dropped off and come back and pick them up 4 years later, or Ozzie and Harriet. These are all the old situation comedies that I watched as a kid. But these are people who could do terrifically if we would just look at them all from a 360 degree and say, what is it that they need? And if we would address those needs, then our numbers would be better. Now, I'm going to mention another donor to you. Can I talk about that? Because we just got a $190 million gift at UNCF, and it's going to impact North Carolina, and it's going to impact North Carolina and Texas in the first year.
That's right.
It's a gift from Fidelity, which is a financial services, but not a bank. I'm not.
Thank you.
But what they decided to do is they want to help students of color in the communities where they are employers, just like Wells Fargo. one of their biggest employment centers in the country is in the Research Triangle. And so they're going to provide every year 100 full scholarships to students in the Raleigh-Durham high schools. And those students will come from what we call the mighty middle at UNCF. Students with a 2.5 grade point average and above. Now, the mighty middle doesn't get into Harvard. Mighty middle doesn't get into Duke. But mighty middle is just going to be just right.
That's right.
For Livingstone. But what they will do if they get that full, they'll get $30,000 a year to attend Livingstone. So I'm gonna bet you that Dr. Davis is gonna be recruiting.
I'll be right there.
And getting kids from Raleigh-Durham to go.
Already there. Already there.
The other thing that they're going to provide is they're going to provide from among their employees mentors. And they're also going to, but they want to impact 50,000 students in the 11 states that so they're going to give other kinds of smaller scholarships. They're learning from great companies like Wells Fargo, because this is the first time they've ever done anything with us, what it means to help students with, well, we do it on the Empower Me tour with Wells Fargo, and we do all kinds of other programs that we've been doing for a long time. If we can get more corporations to step up, like Wells Fargo and Fidelity,
that's right,
and we get the state,
there we go.
We can solve these problems.
Yes.
We can solve these problems, and I want to be just like Representative Cunningham. I want to say that you all can make the difference.
Yes.
Because if your voices, if you really believe in this, and you tell your employer, I want to participate in that, your employer is going to say, here are the ways that you can do that.
That's right.
If you say, I really believe in this, and you tell your elected officials, then they're going to listen to you too. And I believe that, there's a lot wrong out there in the world outside of this building. But there's nothing out there that we can't fix.
That's right.
If we lean into it and give of ourselves. And, I want to see more folks who look like you coming out of our colleges and universities. And this is work that all of us can do together. This isn't a black thing. This isn't a white thing. This isn't a Hispanic thing. This is our thing. And if we'll all embrace this as a collective responsibility, we can really make this a better country, and if it's a better country, we're going to make it a better world.
Can I add to that? Yeah, go ahead and give him a hand, because I'm happy about that. Access and affordability have to work in tandem, right? As Dr. Lomax said, getting them in college is one thing. Having the resources to get them through college is another. But you have to look at it from a continuum, the entire continuum. To the extent that we can get them in college, then that levels the playing field for you. Because now you can come in and not only be mentors, I don't like to use the word mentorship, you can come in and be sponsors and help our students navigate your culture. Think about this, the banking culture is different than being in a CPG. The banking culture is different than being in tech. You can come to our campuses, and I invite you to come to Livingstone College. My doors hang on welcome hinges. Come, because I want you to meet students. You don't appreciate Disney World until you actually go. I would challenge you to come to our campus and engage our students, and you'll see some of the best and brightest students in the country. Unfortunately, there's this appetite to look at institutional profile or institutional pedigree. I would challenge you to abandon institutional pedigree and look at individual profiles, because you have students on UNCF campuses, on some of our state HBCU campuses that have the same profile as some of the schools where you actively recruit. So I encourage you, better yet, I challenge you to come to HBCU campuses, particularly in the state of North Carolina, for talent.
Historically black. They were founded in a time of segregation, and so these were the only schools we could go to. Today, about 18% of all students attending historically black colleges are other. And that other really reflects the communities in which the institutions are located. If you go to Austin, Texas, and you go to Houston-Tillotson University, a private HBCU, a UNCF member institution, it's about 30% Latino. And let me tell you, those Latinos, they love them some Houston-Tillotson. Because what they found at Houston-Tillotson is an institution that embraces them and lifts them up just like they do everybody else.
That's right.
If you go to, I spoke at Tennessee State University at their one of their, it wasn't their summer graduation, I think it was their fall graduation, and I was amazed by the number of students who clearly, by their dress, were not Christians. You know, they were wearing the I'm going to get yes, hijab, and I said, you know, this is an institution in Nashville, Tennessee, which has opened their doors to everybody.
Everybody.
And I just think that that's such an important thing to remember about these institutions. I think it's also important to remember that many of these institutions really do view their mission to have non-traditional students.
That's us.
They're open enrollment institutions. They want people who are not 18 and didn't just graduate from high school. They're students who have children or have had a career, and they have recognized that they want to get more education, and so they're more flexible and will find ways to adjust them. The majority of people who go to college in this country today are non-traditional. And we need to just start getting a lot more flexible about that. And the number of people who are going to go to colleges going forward are going to go there and saying, I don't necessarily want to get a bachelor's degree, but I want to get stackable credentials. And I want to get them on this campus and ultimately maybe at some point get a degree, a bachelor's degree.
That's right.
But if I get those stackable credentials, every time I get another credential, I get an improved employment. You're going to start seeing colleges and universities be much more flexible about that. We're here in the Queen City. One of the big areas that Charlotte wants to really redevelop is healthcare.
Right.
You're going to tell me that every healthcare job that they're going to be providing is going to be a bachelor's in something? No, it's going to be a credentialing degree. And you think about things like cybersecurity, which you can get a great job with a credential. So I think one of the exciting things I hear you talking about is your business model. And so your business model can be for full-time students, but it can also be for part-time students who want to come and
Definitely. And we're expanding that to look at workforce development. I mean, we have just opened a new, we've just announced that we have a new biomanufacturing research lab on our campus where our students will be trained for biotech jobs, but not only our students, but also members of the community. And so, again, we understand, as you had mentioned to us, and thank you for your last study 10 years ago, I'm waiting for the new one, but his last study said that Livingstone College had a $49 million economic impact in our region. So now when I go to business and community, annually, now when I go to my business leaders, when they're recruiting businesses to come to Rowan County, I'm able to go to them and say, Livingstone College is probably one of the most valuable tools you have in your toolbox, but it's underutilized. Here's the position. We are diversity drivers that develop and deploy talent. If you don't look at an HBCU as a diversity driver that develops and deploys talent, you're missing the opportunity.
Yeah.
So with this group, both North Carolina and then really, literally thousands will watch this across the country. Educate yourself, right? Find the resources so that you can have a voice and an informed voice on the value. Go visit.
Please.
Knock on the door.
Yes.
And experience the HBCU in your community. Figure out how you can help. We've got partnerships in communities across the country where we're helping with employment readiness and how to interview and how to get kids ready, young people ready for their job career, or even exposed to what those things might be. But what are some other practical ways that folks who are watching this could help in their own community?
I'm going to say one because this is just on my mind right now. Myth busting. Some would think that a school that takes students with a 2.5 or below would be substandard. I can say that at Livingstone College, here's a Black history fact, we navigated the most rigorous reaffirmation process on the planet. We got through sex reaffirmation. Not one recommendation, not one sanction. Okay, I don't think they got that.
This is like getting past the bank examiners without them having to tell you have something you got to change or fix.
An institution who's underfunded, who serves the under-resourced and the underrepresented, navigated the same reaffirmation process as Duke, UNC, Chapel Hill with 9-figure endowments, and we got through it without one recommendation or one sanction. Which means our academic house is in order, our financial house is in order, and we demonstrated through our quality enhancement plan that learning is actually happening on our campus, which also means, hint, hint, wink, wink, we're a great investment if you want to invest in the HBCU in North Carolina in Salisbury.
All right.
I had to make my pitch. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to bring up, about the, they say by the time you get to your 40s, be prepared if you're in your 20s that you're going to change jobs maybe 7 to 10 times. And that's been out a long, long time. So now you have to be ready to shift as the economics shift and jobs change. You see they're doing a big tech layoff. All of a sudden they don't need some tech people. But all of a sudden we're going to need more health people. So I think as we are moving along, we're going to see other things start to develop where not just distance learning, but since the pandemic, we've done a lot virtually. We're not going to go back on that. So the investments in broadband is huge for North Carolina and some of the rural areas. And we're doing some in that space. But I want to say what ARPA has done. ARPA, which came down from the president, those investments really did infuse some of the HBCUs, and we're still watching to see what else to do. But I want you to knock on your legislative doors. You have a senator, a North Carolina senator. You have a North Carolina state legislator. Wherever you live, I don't care where it is, any county, Alpha County. If you're in the state, you have one. You have a congressional person, you have a senator person. Senator Tillerson, congressional woman. Oh God, Alma Adams. Those people are federal. Your state is going to determine from the general fund, which we appropriate to the HBCUs, and I already told you it's unequal. But you need to knock on those doors. You need to make those phone calls. It doesn't matter if you came and graduated from an HBCU. You don't know what's going to be next in your journey of education. You may look up and find yourself having to go to one of those institutions because it is less financially costly. So you need to do that to ensure that HBCUs continue to be available to the people that are less fortunate, that don't have the kind of money that it takes to go to a Duke University. We need them to continue to exist because they do produce. They do produce. I'm 61, I'm going to tell you. I'm 61. I was never driven to be in the legislature. Never. That is not where I was supposed to be. By the rims and the hopes and the grace of God, education uplifted me out of poverty and moved me into Winston-Salem State. Moved my economic status up so that I could do a part-time job and take another part-time job. Most individuals in the North Carolina General Assembly have a part-time other income source because we don't do $50,000 a year. It's $13,900 for a state legislator, $16,000 for a senator. It's 50 senators and 120 legislators that represent you all. They want to determine what HBCUs get out of their general appropriation. We sitting on a $3 billion right now, $3 billion surplus in the state of North Carolina that we're going to make decisions about what to do with that money. Your voice matters.
And someone who has the responsibility of leading a private HBCU, we need your voice. Because none of that will come to the privates. In my, I'm not going to say argument, but my challenge to the legislature is, on my campus, 58% of the students come from the state of North Carolina. We're private, but we're letting in some of the students that other institutions lock out and leave behind. I've said that twice today. But that's the reality. They need the investment on the front end as well, because at the end of the day, you want them to graduate, you want them to be gainfully employed, you want them to pay taxes in this state. We don't want talent to escape us because we don't make the right investments on the front end.
Yeah. And he is correct. We don't do private. They're just the ones that are inside the UNC system.
Yeah, well,
universities.
Yeah, we find that, there are 101 historically black colleges and universities. About 40% of those are private, 60% are public.
That's right.
And the publics can get state funds as well as federal funds. The privates only get federal funds. Well, I would say in some states. I mean, there's some states where they never get as much as the public institutions. So in fact, they're subsidized. They're subsidizing with their tax dollars the publics, but not the privates. I think that's short-sighted. All higher education is critically important in this country. We need more people to get post-high school certifications and degrees because they'll strengthen the workforce and they'll strengthen the economy. But in the meantime, since we're not getting all those state funds, we have to get more private funds. And that's why we spend all of our time at UNCF knocking on doors of foundations, corporations, and wealthy individuals. And so what I would say to all of you is that if you believe in education and you see it as valuable, make a commitment on your own part to help. And I don't mean just sending your own kids or your own family members to school, but to helping others who need that hand up,
yeah,
and maybe a little bit of that hand out.
Yeah.
It'll make you feel better. And if you ever really want to feel great, you go spend some time with some of these students that you've helped and listen to their stories.
Yes.
And understand what they're trying to achieve with their lives, because they want to be just like you. They want to have a great employer. They don't want to have a job. They want to have a career. They want to be able to build assets, build wealth, transfer intergenerational wealth to the next generation. And when they go up to meet their maker, to be able to say, I think I've done my job. I hope all of you will be able to say that.
That's right. Can I say one thing, Michael? So, Dr. Lomax has really, set the stage and set the tone. But one thing that I'll also mention is that in the post-George Floyd era, you talked about UNCF raising more money in the post-George Floyd era than in years previously imagined, right? But one of the things that helped corporations, during that period, corporations, by and large, may have been responsible for 10% of all philanthropy. I think it's about 15, my numbers might be skewed, about 15% or so now. But you know what really drove that? People like you going to your human resource office and saying, I want my gift matched to support this entity because I believe in what they're doing. So if you find an HBCU that is doing the good work that aligns with your personal core values, by all means make your investment and then ask your employer to do the same.
And you will, for your gift, for your volunteer time, for your board service, all of those qualify a Wells Fargo employee to get a match from the foundation. So don't miss the opportunity to take advantage of that.
So I'm going to applaud that. Thank you. Yes. I'm going to applaud that.
Well, I would just say thank you all. We are both humbled, inspired, and grateful for what you all are doing to help HBCUs across the country and students across the country in developing the next generation. I hope that you all are inspired to get involved in all the various ways. My bet is there's a website or two up here that can help you with all the numbers if you didn't take them down, and I think there are new numbers coming. Yes. So I think the power of this group to be the hands and feet for this work in communities across the country is something that we're inspired by and grateful for. So thank you for being a great
and
partner.
thank you for your
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to say something now, and I said it to him earlier. I was thinking about it, and I don't know why it came on my mind, but I said, you know, some people want to do what is right, and they will do what is right. But in a whole lot of cases, you can't make people do what's right, and it takes laws and statutes to make them do what's right.
All right. Thank you.
That's why we got state legislators.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining us, and we are delighted to have you all. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
And being here with us in Charlotte or online. Thanks. Cyril, thank you.